Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, along with my broadcast partner, Rudy Reyes. And Rudy, glad to have you on the program.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here for the second time.
Well, the second time, my goodness, Rudy, now I want to let everybody know here that this will be a regular weekly thing that leads up to our program, which obviously is Motorman and Rude Dog. So
you got it.
So this is a
take no punches on Twitter.
Exactly. So with that said, we'll get right to the headlines. You want to talk about what's going on in the CBA? Go ahead. You take the lead on this.
There's a lot of stuff going on, Scott. I mean, you're looking at taking a otherwise normally regular seasoned system, and in the past 10, at least in the last 10 years, you would have added 5 10-win teams, 9 9-win teams, 6 8-win teams, and so many teams. Well, I give you examples. Steelers would have made it 8-8 a couple of years in a row. In fact, if this 17-game span was really existent, this was an emergency meeting. Roger Goodell decided to call and say, you know what, you guys all need to be here because we have a lot going on. And so they attended, they showed up, and under the current CBA, the owners are pushing for it. Why? There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of money at stake here. They have a network contract they have to really consider. What they also have to consider is 6 wild card games on wild card weekend. 6, not 2. 6. This is insane. So this is going to change the dynamics of the playoff system, probably for the very unseeable future and the foreseeable future at the same time. But more importantly, the NFL is cashing in, and so are the owners. Why? It's clearly obvious. They're getting more TV time, more network time, and more importantly, it's really about what is going to be brought to the table. Don't forget the 2020 NFL Draft is just a couple of months away, and by being at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, I'm going to have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, a lot of networking, a lot of opportunities to talk about the CBA, what it means to them as players headed into a new 17-game system. I foresee this as probably being one of the most historic changes to the NFL landscape in recent memory, probably within the last, 15 or 20 years. Forget the chop blocks. You can put all the rules on the table, so you know what, this is where we're at right now. More importantly, it's about the game increase. It's about the monetary increase right now at the NFL, and the owners of these respective franchise teams within the organization of the NFL is going to experience.
Okay, so Rudy, what are your thoughts about the potential possibility that this thing gets done sooner than one would really go ahead and think? I personally would like to see the 17-game schedule, and I think the reason why I like to see it is you got that oddball game where everybody has to play an overseas game, and I think that's good for the growing of the brand worldwide.
I probably foresee something like this happening within the next 24 to 48 hours. Why? Because clearly, again, there's a lot at stake. Owners are going to have to show willingness to make concessions to kind of set the table and set the tone for these players to say, you know what, this is not something to be concerned about. This is something that will actually benefit you. So one team, maybe 2 teams will get a bye week. That's it. All these other teams are going to play the road. Now, we've had this conversation before, and I've had this conversation myself on the Rude Dog Show about how momentum needs to be had when momentum is being shown. Meaning that if your team is hot, like super hot, you get a bye week. Now there are exceptions. Obviously, the exception is not the rule. But it's more about these players that are playing on fire, that are absolutely on point. DeAndre Hopkins was on point. Deshaun Watson. Then they had the bye week. Everything went down the tubes for them. But if they get to continue to play, you're going to see a lot more of hot teams going in and basically manhandling these other teams who have had their bye week, right? But again, the NFLPA has to agree with a longer season. The NFL clearly is in the driver's seat when it comes to how much pressure, how much of a relinquished amount of control that they're going to have to give to the NFLPA in order to sell this to the players. So Could some of these concessions have to do with economics? Would these players have to be paid a higher salary? Is there more compensation associated with winning? I mean, this hasn't even been unwrapped yet. To be honest with you, this is the entry point to everything, because players get more money via playoff checks if they win their conference, if they win a wild card, if they win the Super Bowl. This ups the ante big time. And of course, you know who keeps the majority of the money, and those are the owners within the NFL. But more importantly, of course, out of all characters within the NFL landscape, owners included with that statement, guys like Jerry Jones has really kind of been the, pushing component in all of this. So you have to look at this as being something that's been on the table in kind of maybe a smokescreen situation, allowing this to unfold right now. Players receive 47% of revenue. That's a lot of money.
Right.
Not 50%, 47%. But more importantly, if this CBA, let's just say it lasts for 10 years, and the players like it, and the NFL likes it, what you really have to look at is who's going to get more money after this new CBA is signed. Well, it's going to go to the players, right? Because now you're extending a regular 16 game by adding a game. Not only that, but you take the amount of time that they don't have for that bye week, they would have otherwise gotten a 17 game or a 16 game landscape rather. Now you're pushing that envelope. Now they're going to get even more. So I'm looking at 48%, maybe somewhere in that genre, maybe 49. It really, really depends. This could be, again, very unprecedented move by the NFL in order to get something like this done along with the NFLPA. Why? Because there's more money at stake. And what player doesn't want more money? What team doesn't want more money? What owner doesn't want more money? Why the NFL would not want more money? So, it's really that it's basic economics, purely simply. And if the players buy into it and the NFLPA says, you know what, we're going to do this, guess what's going to happen? It's going to get done, and they're really going to appreciate it. And I foresee this probably happening at the next time they sit down to really take a look at this CBA and say, is it working? Well, everybody's richer, so they're going to say, yeah, it's working. I like it. Let's keep it. I think this will be something that will stick and move forward.
Now, I was reading on this. Didn't I read correctly that they were talking about a 25% increase? It was at minimum salary. Correct me on those numbers if I'm off base, but I thought I was reading on ESPN that that's where the numbers were across the board, where the minimum salary would go up and then the other levels would go up as well.
Sure. And that's exactly what could very well happen. But more importantly to all of this, to the greater scheme of everything, that means that the NFL gives teams money in order to acquire draft picks, right? That's how it's been since the beginning of the CBA. But what ends up happening is that now they're going to have to give them more. So now if you give them more, who else gets more? The other players on the roster.
Right?
Because now you're expanding it. So it's a huge trickle-down effect. I think it's fantastic. I think, again, very unprecedented to call this emergency meeting. But right now, owners are in the air and about to land in order to help make this become a reality. And like I said, it could very well happen between the next 24 to 48 hours, at least. If it doesn't, the deal will get done. But there is a possible deadline for March 18th. So, 30 days out, they have a lot of ways to iron out the crinkles in the shirts and the ties and the pants and hopefully be able to get these players on board, because the NFLPA really has to sell it. And I think there are going to be some players who are not going to be clearly on board with it. But if it's part of the CBA, they kind of don't have a choice at that point.
Well, I know that the league New Year starts with it in March. Is that why they're pushing for it?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Roger Goodell is one of those guys where when you look at what he's done for the NFL, fans may not like him a whole lot, and he gets booed in a lot of stadiums and a lot of venues and things of that nature. But to be quite honest with you, if you have a vested interest, if you're a player, let's say I'm rising, I'm like the top fifth pick in the NFL draft, and someone's saying you can end up making $5 million, $6, $7 million on your rookie deal to last you for 3 years, 4 years, 5. Sign me up. sign me up. And there's no reason why they would probably throw that out as being anything eventual. But at the same token, and a player could ultimately retire with that kind of money if they choose to not play past their rookie deal. I think it's I think it was kind of a win-win, and we've seen this in the offseason. There's been a lot of teams already moving in the offseason. Greg Olson comes over, right? Another component of that 48%. Leaves Carolina because he wants to be on a competitive team. He didn't say he retired. He wanted to move on. But that's exactly what he did. And now he'll be receiving passes from Russell Wilson in Seattle this upcoming season. So he's going to be a part of that 48%. So good for them, good for the NFL, good for players, and ultimately the owners are the ones who seriously are going to benefit. And at the end of the day, all these boos you're going to hear when Roger Goodell enters these remaining stadiums, the ones he may not have visited, like Pittsburgh or maybe even Philadelphia, right? The only time he shows up is when they're in the Super Bowl or a championship, game.
Right.
Those boos will probably be very muddled, knowing that now fans have an additional game or set of games when it comes to playoff season they get a chance to attend. So again, it's a win for everybody.
Okay, well, that's what it's all about, is that it is a win for everybody. Let's talk about some of the other things pertaining to the draft. We talked about Tua Tagovailoa and Matthew Stafford. I know you had some strong opinions on that.
Matthew Stafford's a guy who I don't think he's lived up to the expectations. He certainly hasn't built. He didn't live up to the hype when he was drafted out of college, to be quite honest with you. I've never been a huge fan of Matthew Stafford. I know you're from Michigan and you've seen him play, time and time again. But at the same token, he just hasn't transposed into a player that this Lions team really needs. And everybody has Joe Burrow going to Detroit. Look, if I was Detroit and I really wanted to make a staple call and try to move up in the draft since they're picking third overall, I would go after Joe Burrow. And I would give up some of that half-acre farm in order to get Joe Burrow. Everybody knows who Joe Burrow is, won Heisman, and wins a national championship. I think for Tua Tagovailoa, he's one of those guys that could very well fall in the lap of luxury with the Miami Dolphins, would end up being a fan favorite. But again, either one of these guys would be absolutely fantastic to have. And again, everybody's concerned about Tua Tagovailoa. Is he hip ready to go? Look, he's got a medical clearance, so he's ready to go. Teams are excited about it. Could there be a move up? Could there be a jump up to get Tua if the Bengals really wanted to make a statement? If they were happy and comfortable with that drafting position, medical. Of course, everybody knows what happened in Alabama. He had an injury, a ruined hip. He went in, he got it replaced, he's fixed. At least that's what the medical doctors seem to think. I'm on the fence about it, to be quite honest with you, because you're testing range of motion with your hip. You're testing durability with the hip. You're not going to get those types of linebacker hits and defensive tackle coverages at the combine. No. Is Tua going to play, and exhibit his athleticism and his targeting and his football knowledge at the combine? I think to some extent he will. I think Joe Burrow probably is going to show out, to be quite honest with you. But I think more importantly, if the Lions want to stay in their third position, guys like Chase Young at Ohio State could fall in their lap very quickly. Very, very quickly. He's a pass rusher. He's solid. He doesn't have the experience that other linebackers have came into the NFL in their first year. But he does hold, he's a leader in sacks, pressures at Ohio State. So if Detroit was not comfortable in moving up to grab Joe Burrow, they can find an excellent move with Chase Young. The problem is you still have Matthew Stafford. And to be quite honest with you, aforementioned, look, I like the guy's nothing to do with him personally, but his athleticism, his football IQ, the types of throws that he's made. Yeah, he's made some great throws, especially last season. I think last year was his best year. I think more importantly, when you look at guys like Tua, who could fall in their lap as well, I see Detroit possibly moving up to set that precedence to say, Tua, sit out for a year, get comfortable, get on the sidelines, stick your nose in the playbook, get in the film room. Tua's a hard-nosed, guy, not only from a quarterback perspective, but from a football IQ standpoint as well. Nick Saban's been doing this for a long time. I mean, how many successful quarterbacks and national championships and players of the year has he helped create within his system? Too many to count, too many to mention. But more importantly, I like the move if they go up to get Tua, if Detroit decides to do that and give up maybe 2 4th-round picks for him, maybe 5th-round picks, maybe 2 6th-round picks. Because don't forget, guys like Justin Herbert are still going to be there out of Oregon. So, there's so many moving pieces, moving parts. And I want to say this for the record. In 2018, when I was at the NFL draft, I may have mentioned this before, but a guy by the name of Lamar Jackson, NFL MVP, let me put this on record, and I know we're recording this, so it's all good. People were thinking, you know what? This guy right here should be drafted as a running back, wide receiver. Let's trade him out. Let's see what we can get. Wait, what? Wait, hold on. He leads passing records at Louisville. He's a Heisman Trophy, and you're going to stick him at a wide receiver? Okay, that's absolutely nuts. I even think guys like Mel Kiper talked about, how that the Ravens shouldn't touch him, at least draft him in the quarterback position. He was drafted 32nd overall by the Ravens. He's now the reigning NFL MVP, and it doesn't belong to Patrick Mahomes. Why? Because Lamar Jackson basically balled out the entire season. I mean, they didn't have a winning record because they didn't have Lamar Jackson. Had they had Joe Flacco, it would have been the same old, same old. Lamar Jackson changed that. He changed everything as far as the Baltimore Ravens are concerned. Steelers don't have a first-round pick, as an example, and they're going to have to really drive deep and maybe even move up to grab a guy like Justin Herbert, who has the arm. But don't forget, they're way down on the totem pole when it comes to draft picks. So it just kind of makes you wonder, what do they have? What are they going to do? Are they comfortable with the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh? I know if I was a Lions fan, I'm not comfortable in those shoes with having Matthew Stafford, to be quite honest with you. And all due credit to Matthew Stafford, I'm just not a fan, and I probably never will be. He reminds me of a poor man's Phillip Rivers, to be quite honest.
Really?
Of course, Phillip Rivers moves on from Los Angeles. Who knows where he could land? Free agency hasn't even started yet, and teams are already making moves. Happens every year. Not to be really surprised or shocked by that, but to be quite honest with you, there's a lot of great talent. And just because I'm talking Division I doesn't mean that my love is not in Division II. We talked about this before, Scott, that there are tons of talent in Division II. Make no mistake about it. So if you don't find anything on day 1, day 2, you're going to find day 3 with tons of talent. Thick at wide receiver in Division I, some in Division II. Quarterbacks aplenty. Plenty going into the first round, second round, maybe even some of the third for that matter. But those are my thought process in regards to the draft. Who can move up?
Here. Now I'm going to give you mine. Okay, you ready?
Go ahead.
All right, good. Number 1, Matt Stafford is not the problem in Detroit, being a guy that's closer to the situation, just so you know. The Lions' problems, Rudy, over the years, ever since Barry Sanders left, has been a lack of a running game. Okay, you've seen a lot of great players. Calvin Johnson leaves because of the culture. And you saw an elite receiver. It's about management making poor decisions. Golden Tate did not need to be traded. Kyle Van Noy goes to the New England Patriots. Guess what? Didn't go to Jared to get a ring. He got one in New England. Cliff Averill goes out to Seattle. Guess what? Didn't need to go to Jared. Got one in the Pacific Northwest. I like Matthew Stafford, and the Lions were doing fine with him last year until that back injury ended his season. The Lions' issues last year at quarterback were because they didn't spend enough money for a suitable backup instead of turning it over to Jeff Driscoll and David Blau. I think Matthew Stafford's the best quarterback that they've had in years. I really do. When you start making poor decisions, Rudy, in the front office, you let impact player after impact player go, and to compound that problem by thinking, I'm going to bring in Matt Patricia, but meanwhile, I'm going to get rid of Jim Caldwell, who, by the way, did get him to the playoffs, okay? They regressed under the Patriot way. Matthew Stafford is not the problem. Let's talk about the quarterbacks, okay? I am not, under no uncertain terms, impressed with Tua. I am not. First of all, I don't think the Miami Dolphins, since this is my neck of the woods where I live now, are impressed with his injury history. You think I'm going to go out there and gamble a top 5, 10 pick on a guy who can't stay on the field? No. Okay, Joe Burrow is an Ohio kid. Whether he likes it or not, if the Bengals are going to pick him, where is he going to go? Do you think he's going to force his hand like John Elway did with the Colts and work his way over to Denver? Do you think he's going to pull out an Eli Manning, okay, going from San Diego to the Giants? No, the Lions need a good, strong impact defensive player because they couldn't stop anybody. They need a running attack. That's what they need. I have no problem whatsoever with Matthew Stafford. Never have. I always liked his quirky delivery anyhow, how you know, when it comes to throwing the ball sidearm in some cases, he has a decent release, and he does throw for a lot of yards like every quarterback on the planet. No, Matthew Stafford's fine, but when you have an indigent supporting cast, Rudy, there's a problem. Now, Justin Herbert is a guy I believe that the Dolphins have talked about because they've gone ahead and talked about the fact that maybe they're a little bit nervous about Tua as well. So, again, Nick Saban's... When was the last time that Nick Saban had a quarterback drafted, I think, in the first round? I believe, if I heard correctly, was it 2007? We'd have to do the research, but I thought I read that somewhere. Well, Rude Dog, that's 13 years ago. I don't know where you were 13 years ago, but that's an awful long time. You follow me? Now, what were the other prospects that you were mentioning out there that you thought? Lamar Jackson, okay, was a guy who slid to the Ravens, and how did they work out? Now, I have a question to you, Rudy, okay, about Mel Kiper. All right, ready?
Go ahead.
What kind of a source do you think that this guy is? Do you think he's a real big draft source? Because I remember years ago, Vince Tobin and Mel Kiper had some issues. Since Mel Kiper's never played the game, you can go ahead and research every person on the planet. And I'm not going to say Vince Tobin is a great, credible source, but my question is a football guy versus a guy studying the draft, who wins out on that debate?
Well, look. The bottom line is this: is that Matthew Stafford, you know, he played in 8 games. He didn't play a full season. He had lower back injuries,
right,
as stated. But again, the numbers previously, and I know we can take that 8 games that he didn't start out of the equation, but out of the time he's been there since 2009. In 2009, he was 2-8, right? Or his quarterback, or his QBR, he was 2 for 8, 1 for 2, 10 for 6, 4 for 12, 7 for 9, and the only numbers that are better than that were in 2014, 16, 17, and that's it. So from 2009 to in 10 years, he's surmounted hardly anything at all. And at the times that he needed to make those throws were bonehead, and he should have never, ever made them. His QBR has not been above 100, ever. Hasn't even been higher than 66, ever in his career. 10 years in Detroit. I understand the talent level there. I understand that ownership may not want to pay big-time money, but if they don't keep Darius Slay, if they don't find a way to keep him from becoming a free agent, they're going to have bigger problems because now you minimize the receiving core. Now you're relying on a running game you still don't have. So what do? You draft a running back. There's no solid running back available in the first round. There isn't any.
Right.
Matthew Stafford is he may not be the entire problem. He may not be the go-to guy, the poster child for what's going wrong in Detroit, but his numbers don't exactly reflect any Hall of Fame numbers by any means. In 10 years, that's a long time in NFL years to still be the old dog with new tricks. Will his new tricks come in the NFL draft? That remains to be seen. Would I like to see the Lions get over the hump to be the team that everybody, including their fans, want them to be? Maybe they won't. But they really need to fix those issues. You mentioned it. You said it yourself. They need a running game. Yes. Do they need defense? Do they need pocket pressure to get the opposing team and to give them better field position on the opposite end, so Matthew Stafford doesn't have to score 42 points a game like we had talked about with Aaron Rodgers, who clearly didn't have a solid defense just 2 years ago and ended up going to an NFC title game, as an example. So, Matt Furr came in, cleaned all that up. But again, if Chase Young stays there, right, and he falls in their lap, you take him. You just do. Why? Because he's elite. He's one of those edge rushing guys that has solid swim move. He's got great footwork. He's got great vision, great sight. I just think that you need to start looking for a replacement now for Matthew Stafford and give him a year. Give him 2 years. And I think depending on whether or not Matthew Stafford, of course everybody needs a solid backup in the NFL. There's no big secret about that one. And I mean, and I understand his medical may not be the best thing and may keep him out of being drafted in the top, at least in the first round, in the top 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 picks. But I really don't see him sliding, to be quite honest with you. And I think that teams really need to be aware of some potential in regards to where he's going to go, what he's going to be doing. And to be quite honest with you, everybody's talking about a mock trade from Washington to grab him, and I just don't see that. So, and of course, you were talking about Mel Kiper for a minute. I want to address that because Mel Kiper, has been around for a while. Make no mistake. I watched a video of him earlier today.
Okay.
And of course, I have nothing but the utmost respect for guys like Mel Kiper. No, he's never played the game, but he's a hardcore numbers guy, and he's seen many players come and go. He was wrong about Nolan Harrison. He was wrong about Lamar Jackson. He's been wrong about a lot of guys. But out of the ones he was wrong with, how many was he actually right on? And right on point, I might add. A lot. So as far as me, thinking that Mel Kiper is the man and so on and so forth, I think he's kind of sliding a little bit, to be quite honest with you. He didn't seem like he could sit still in the chair in that yesterday with Louis Riddick and Todd McShay. It didn't appear as though he was maybe he wasn't uncomfortable. Maybe he had an acid problem. I don't know. All I know is that Mel Kiper is still the guy, and he still does absolutely great things, and does a lot of solid prediction, and his nose to the grindstone. He's going to continue being that way. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for Mel Kiper.
And I'm not knocking Mel Kiper. I think Todd McShay's a very credible individual. I remember Mike Mayock of the Raiders is certainly one of the more credible people when it comes to judging talent. The only thing I can tell you about Mel Kiper since I first saw him do the draft versus what he is now is he has the same hair, and that's a lot of it. He's probably gone ahead and greased it down pretty well. That's very consistent, so you always know who Mel Kiper is. But to me, if I'm going to sit there and be a numbers crusher, and again, let's face the reality, Rudy, there's no real exact science to trying to develop a prospect because people make mistakes on prospects, okay? But to me, Tua's medical history, I wouldn't take him in the top 10. Now, if he were to fall maybe 15 or 20, then obviously he gets paid less with the rookie wage scale. Then maybe you take a flyer on him. It's hard to tell. Again, it's all premature conversation anyhow. But if you're a team like the Detroit Lions where Bob Quinn, the general manager, and Matt Patricia are under a win or you're else situation, then I don't think you go with Tua. You're not going to sell the Fords, okay, for 2 more years when the last time they won a championship of any kind was on my birthday, by the way, December 29th, 1957, and one playoff win in that period. They're getting very restless, and they have a great, rabid fan base, and it's going to be hard to do it. Yes, they'll draw real well no matter how bad they are, but the reality is the Fords would like to see a winner, whether anybody wants to believe it or not. And I don't think Tua's going to get him any closer. In fact, I think he probably gets him a little further. And you know what? He's going to be scrutinized heavily with his medical until anybody gives anybody a reason that he's healthy enough. He hasn't even lasted in a couple of college campaigns. What makes you think the pros is going to be any easier when the guys are a lot bigger, stronger, and they can knock him out quicker? That's my question. I don't, again, and I'm glad.
That's going to be that. We're going to find out. We're going to find exactly what it's going to take, and how resistant and resilient, rather, that Tua is going to be under center.
Right.
It really remains to be seen. So, I got to see real game time film to be either convinced that he's going to be able to make it an entire season or be concerned that he's going to be the first one out on the sidelines with another medical in relation to the hip. That's the bottom line.
You know, it's funny. You and I could sit here and do a show all on the Stafford 201 and have a ball with it, but I'm glad we're definitely focusing on it a lot because it gives you the ability to talk about a pocket passer versus a guy who's a bit more mobile. But when you look at the mobile quarterbacks over the years, what is their actual long-term durability? How many of these guys actually go down before they get busted up? RG3 is a great example, right, Rudy? Okay. Who, you're all right for a while until you sustain that first injury, and then durability questions come into play. So, all right, so let's talk about Joe Burrow. Does he stay in the state of Ohio, and do you think he's going to be manipulated at all that he doesn't want to play with the Bengals, even though so many people have told him the other way? I don't think he has as much leverage as he thinks he does.
I think he's got plenty of it.
Yeah?
I really do, yeah. Why? Because he's won a national championship. Look, and we talked about this before. The NBA is an organization, as an example, that guys are starting to pick and choose where they want to go, when they want to go, and how they want to go out from the last team to the next team. The NFL could follow that exact precedent. Players could do the very same thing. Look, he's won a national championship. He's won a national championship at a young age than the Bengals have ever won a Super Bowl. So put that in perspective. So I understand he's an Ohio guy. He always will be. But Joe Burrow can write his own ticket. He can. And Cincinnati Bengals are not going to be able to force him to sign anytime soon. Not to suggest that they would. Why? Because clearly this guy has all the cards. And Joe Burrow has all the cards. Not only that, but as an organization, the Bengals organization, who's been so horrible for so long in many different respects, and even including Chris Collinsworth in that statement, what you really have to look at is, are they going to get him the weapons? Are they going to guarantee they're going to get guys to surround him in order to win, to consistently win? Are they committed to doing that? That's the biggest question I have for Cincinnati and for the Bengals, for that matter. Don't forget, this is a two-team town. There is no additional Pittsburgh team in the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens ran the roost last year. They ran the tables on everybody for the most part. Except for when it got into a championship scenario, which we've seen last year, not a year, but the year before that against the LA Chargers. So, it really kind of begs the question of whether or not the Bengals are committed to not only drafting Joe Burrow, but more importantly, if they do decide to do that, what are they going to get to support him when it's all said and done? And the second year, no longer rookie head coach, second year head coach in Cincinnati. So you want to talk about somebody who holds all the cards? Joe Burrow does. If I was Joe Burrow and knowing what he's seen and historically has done his homework on and research on, I would not sign with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well,
I would go up and want to be asked to go out and be drafted by somebody else. And there are other teams who need a quarterback who would be better served with a quarterback like Joe Burrow.
But let's just use a hypothetical. According to Mike Tannenbaum, the former Jets and Dolphins executive, let's just say Joe Burrow doesn't want to sign. Cincinnati holds on to his rights, Rudy, for 5 years. So either you're going to play with Cincinnati, you're not going to go to the Canadian League, and I'll be darned if he's going to the XFL. So what's he going to do, sit for a while and do nothing for 5 years, or you just have to gut it out, do the best you can, and do what you talked about, Rude Dog, and that's just hope and pray that the Bengals surround him with a lot of good talent, because you're right. They don't have much over there to begin with. So, if he's going to play football, he's going to play it in Cincinnati, or he's not going to be playing it at all.
Well, I don't know about that. That really remains to be seen, because don't forget, you have the Redskins who are obviously sold on their quarterback situation, and he's still a rookie. He still needs time under center. We've seen the Redskins fall through big time with the guy under center. We're just talking quarterbacks, or in general, or even specific for that matter. And look, Joe Burrow's no dummy. He knows that if he goes to Cincinnati, that he's going to have an uphill battle, that he's going to have to, I don't know what you're going to learn from Andy Dalton other than maybe just game time experience, to be quite honest, because Andy Dalton just seems to choke at the worst possible time. I mean, it's like giving him a chicken bone inside of his beef stew or something. I don't know, but Andy Dalton, there's really nothing Andy Dalton can show Joe Burrow other than real-time game experience and what that means to him moving forward. Does Andy Dalton take a seat in lieu of having Joe Burrow? I know I'd rather have Joe Burrow than Andy Dalton every day of the week, and especially twice on Sunday. And to be quite honest with you, it could very well drive Andy Dalton out of town. And of course, that's a Roadhouse reference, if anybody knows that movie. Anybody who watches that late Patrick Swayze movie, you know what I'm talking about. You always had to be nice. Well, Joe Burrow doesn't really have to be nice in this situation. He's going to, because that's just who he is. He's an Ohio native, just like Ben Roethlisberger, as an example. Complete parallel guy. Ben wasn't drafted out of a big-time school except for Miami Redhawks, and the Redhawks were basically nothing before Roethlisberger showed up. But Joe Burrow, being an Ohio guy, his best bet is to actually have that conversation with Ben Roethlisberger about what it's like to play for your hometown team or, the team in the next state over, per se. And I think Joe Burrow can learn a lot more from Ben Roethlisberger than he would from Andy Dalton. However, at the end of the day, it's really about the best fit for the team. And if the Bengals decide to go on a full-blown scale, so, we need to grab Joe Burrow because he's the guy, we want him to be the guy, we know that he can be the guy, guess what? He's going to end up being the guy. And training camp will be that determining factor as to who gets to start under center in the regular season.
All right, well, here. You talk about Andy Dalton. First of all, let me go ahead and comment on that, Rudy, okay? And that's this. Andy Dalton right now is seeking a trade, and I think the Bengals are doing what they can to accommodate Andy. So I don't think Joe Burrow's going to learn anything from a guy that isn't going to be there. Don't know where the Bengals are going to go. But, Andy Dalton, I think, is a pretty solid quarterback and a good quarterback. But, again, playing for a bad team. You talked about Stafford. I've heard a lot of people say that Stafford will do real well under a much different culture, as everybody does. I got to tell you right now, when I was at the Taste of the NFL, you'll get a kick out of this, okay? I hung out with Al Bubba Baker, formerly of the Lions, and you know what he made me do before I got his picture, Rudy? He made me go ahead and hold a Browns helmet up because he wanted to get the heck out of Detroit because the culture was so bad. I had to hold a Cleveland Browns helmet, and that was painful, especially with you being a Pittsburgh Steelers guy. That was hard. I swear to God, I had to hold him, Rudy. I had to hold a Cleveland Browns helmet. That was painful. Orange is a nice color in Florida because it's sunshine, but to hold that one? Really? I don't think so. Just telling you, Rude Dog. Our act over at the Miami Beach Convention Center was one thing, but what I had to do at the Diplomat Hotel was hold a Cleveland Browns hat. So
yeah, they're going to have some serious issues.
Right.
The Bengals really need to get their act together quickly, and I know it took them forever to get rid of Hugh Jackson, but I think more importantly, they really, again, have to commit. If they're going to have a conversation with Joe Burrow, they have to commit to getting this guy and getting the pieces around him to help him succeed, including getting him and A.J. Green on the same page. Defensively, they're really going to have to do a lot better, especially in the pass rush situation. But put this in your hat for just a minute. The Chargers, because of Phillip Rivers leaving, I mentioned the Chargers earlier, and the fact that Phillip Rivers has decided to take his paddles somewhere else and leave the Rivers to somebody else, could go down the opposite direction without the horse as well. But more importantly, the Chargers would be shoe-in to pick up Tua Tagovailoa. I'm just throwing that out there. It's possible. It could happen. Anything can happen. Don't forget, Chargers are 6th seeded. And they're in position to get Justin Herbert.
Right.
But more importantly, Justin Herbert is solid. Make no mistake. Justin Herbert just balled out. There are times that the offensive line may not have been on the same page with wide receivers. I watched a few games this past season with Justin Herbert under center. But Justin Herbert's a baller. If you need a guy to get in the end zone and you're 3rd and short or you're 4th and 1, he's the guy who's going to get it done regardless. Right. And I know NFL game speed, not like NCAA game speed, but at the same token, he can get it done. I think Justin Herbert could end up winding up somewhere else, not named the Los Angeles Chargers. They need to move up to Tua because Tua has much more, and I know you're not a Tua fan. I get it.
What gives you that idea?
I don't know. Be it for me to assume that one.
Yeah, right.
Justin Herbert can end up somewhere else, to be quite honest with you. Will Cam Newton stay in the Carolinas? Will they want to trade him in Carolina?
Right.
Maybe. I think Justin Herbert makes more sense in Carolina than he does in Los Angeles, to be quite honest with you. So, look, the grander scheme of things here is that, and this is kind of to surmise my component. Matthew Stafford needs a better environment to do better things, to be the better player, to be the player that everybody wants him to be. And I know that he can. Yeah, he's been selected to Pro Bowls and this, that, and the other, but it doesn't really mean anything in the grander scheme of things, especially when you're an aging quarterback. He's 32. He's going to be 33 this upcoming season. So you have to look at that as age being a factor. Where does he belong? Where does he fit? Matthew Stafford could end up being the backup somewhere in some NFL franchise because, I mean, if you look at Jacksonville, they're really hating it right now. We don't know what they're doing with their quarterback situation between Nick Foles, who signed basically a deal of a lifetime, almost like Jay Cutler's contract. Everybody remembers that guy sitting on the sideline and gets paid for more being on the sideline than he did even playing under center. And I think that Matthew Stafford could end up being that guy with that monster deal. But to be honest with you, nobody's going to want that contract. Nobody.
I would love to.
He's going to have to play it out there in Detroit. And if Tua lands there, I think it's a solid fit, to be quite honest with you. And I think all the aforementioned players that I had talked about would end up, working in those relative systems and working really well.
Well, you're right. You hit on a couple of things here, so I got to give you your due. The Chargers need another quarterback, okay? And I can see where one of those prospects, Herbert, could be a good fit anywhere. I know there's talk about him going to the Chargers. The Dolphins have talked about him. Carolina, you're okay right there. Okay, those are three logical spots. Again, you and I will beat the Stafford thing until we're blue in the face, but I love to see Matthew Stafford in Jacksonville. Oh, I wouldn't mind, and neither will the next guy that'll be appearing on the program a little while, David Levin, but we'll get to that later on. But the reality of the situation is, I don't know why everybody's so stuck on Tua. I don't, and I'm not going to even try to. I stand a better chance of solving the Rubik's Cube than I do the Tua answer, because I just don't get it.
Contrary move, fair. Look. Since 2007, since 2007, Nick Saban, and this is all fact, he hasn't had a first rounder in 2008. He's had 22 Crimson Tide players that have gone in round one, including Mika Fitzpatrick, Calvin Ridley, Rashawn Evans, Daron Payne, Ronnie Harrison. So those players that have gone first round have been absolutely outstanding. Julio Jones is another guy, wide receiver for the Falcons. Mark Ingram, running back for the Saints. What happened with that guy? Maury Cooper balled out in Oakland, and he's hopefully set to receive a very handsome contract from the Dallas Cowboys because he helps keep them in many games they otherwise would not be in. Down to Hightower, linebacker, all-pro, New England Patriots. So, Clinton Dix, he didn't quite pan out where he was originally with Redskins, but he went over to Green Bay. Look, Nick Saban knows what he's doing. All these players are doing is following his rule set. Is Nick Saban the exception, not the rule? Maybe not. But I think that with his system and the way that it's been designed to fit players, to help players excel, you're going to continue seeing Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide, Roll Tide, come out with nothing but first rounders from this. And I'm not a huge Alabama guy. I understand their system. I understand that they've won quite a bit, quite often, and very frequently, I might add, all being the very same thing. But when you have a system and it works, you continue turning out players in that system and help them explore even more about who they are as people as well as athletes at the next level in the NFL.
Well, didn't Eddie Lacy, I think, came from there too, didn't he, if I remember right?
Yeah.
Right. So, again, he didn't perform badly in Green Bay. But again, you already said the 2007 stats, so that comes the question: are these players a product of the system, or are they that good of players? And I guess that's the next $1 zillion question, because we all certainly know that Saban has done a fine job with Alabama. He's a great college coach, but just because you're a great college coach, Rudy, doesn't mean that all your players are what they are. I mean, you talk about Michigan pulling out some great prospects, Ohio State, just to name a few other ones, and there's a lot of great schools that put out prospects.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, those are just a couple that come up top of my mind. You have a bunch of them in the Sunshine State where I live. The Florida Gators, Seminoles put out some good ones, the Hurricanes for a long time, and the beat goes on and on. So, all right, now that we've talked about that, why don't we go over a couple of other things while we have another 10 minutes or so, and that being this, okay? Why don't you give everybody a preview of what we're in for our program, The Motorman and the Rude Dog Show?
Well, there's actually a lot going on. I want to talk a little bit about Major League Baseball, this man-fred or man-scared thing going on. The indecisiveness by Major League Baseball. Manfred not, I don't know. It's just confusing a lot of players right now. A lot of people have absolutely no sympathy for the Astros. And, of course, those aforementioned managers have been relieved of their duty from the other teams. So we're going to talk about all that, player reaction. Mike Trout had plenty to say about it, Howie Kendricks. Everybody's got an idea. But make no mistake, Major League Baseball will not tolerate, and I'll repeat this, will not tolerate retaliation by pitchers who lost to them during the regular season actually 2 years ago. And take their revenge out in the 2020 season. There will be stiff fines and stiff penalties in accordance with that. And of course, Major League Baseball also has quite a few issues on their hands. So we're going to talk about that. Again, Aaron Judge weighed in, Trevor Bauer, Cody Bellinger, and the list goes, Justin Turner. I mean, the list goes on and on and on from these guys. But more importantly, what is MLBPA going to do? Major League Baseball Players Association has their hands full. And to be quite honest with you, we're going to really dive into this debacle that's going on in the major leagues right now, unprecedented since 1919. So we're really going to go into depth on that one. And then, of course, we're going to stay abreast of what's going on with these CBA contract conversations, see if they came to some type of resolution on Motorman and Rude Dog. Don't us a follow, by the way, at Take No Punches. Give us a follow. Let us know what you think. Like it, love it, share it, but never leave it. So make sure you tune in for that one.
Yeah, I know Dusty Baker, obviously, is a manager of the Houston Astros. I'm glad he got another job. But boy, he got under some tough circumstances, didn't he?
Oh, gosh, how tough was that?
Yeah.
How tough does he,
really?
How tough does he have it, having to answer these questions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He is resilient. He did it with the Cubs, and he's just one of those guys that will always be the forefront, probably one of the coolest heads will always prevail. When you're talking about Dusty Baker, probably the coolest head to prevail in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and I should also point out, too, y'all, you can read the South Florida Tribune, www.southfloridatribune.com. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. Okay, so now with our show, Rudy, why don't you talk about your baby, the Rude Dog Show? What do our fans out there have to look forward to over the course of the weekend?
Well, there's a lot of good things going on. I have, I have a lot of stuff going on here. Going to have Sam Adams join me. He's a former NFLer who has full investment in Spokane Shock. If you don't know who they are a football team that is on the rise. We're going to talk about all things there. That's going on tomorrow. And then, obviously, I'm going to try to continue acquiring fantastic guests for the Rude Dog Show. Go to RudeDogShow.com. Give me a follow at Rude Dog Reyes. Go on Facebook, find me there, and I always love sports interaction with everybody.
That sounds good. Well, Rudy, all I can tell you, we're on to something really good here, so we look forward to bringing you on every week here on the Sports Exchange as we talk about, the day's events as well as what we have to look forward to as well on Motorman and Rude Dog. So, Rudy, it's always a lot of fun doing it. And I got to tell you, before we get off, I do want to tell you it was a blast having you down here in Southern Florida to work with you.
Thank you me and my lovely wife, we definitely appreciated being down there and having you show us the time of her life.
Oh, you know what, Rudy? I can't wait till the time comes when you're here permanently. I know it's probably a pipe dream at the moment, but you know what? Well, right now it may be a pipe dream, but with all due respect, Doug, I enjoyed taking you and your beautiful wife around there so you can whet your appetite that maybe the Rocky Mountains may not be the Atlantic Ocean, but to see Janet's eyes light up when she saw that scenery, considering what you had to deal with in South Beach, to me, makes it all the more interesting. We know
much so.
Katie Ebling is...
Thank you again. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Definitely appreciate it, and look forward to being back on.
Well, we'll pick it up again tomorrow, Rudy. Thank you very much for being on the Sports Exchange, and look forward to having you on every week on the same network, the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Thank you very much, Rudy Reyes. And once again, give them your contact information on Twitter.
You can follow me at Rudy Reyes on Twitter. You can go to my Facebook page, throw me a like there. I always appreciate those. I always try to converse as much as I can on that platform. Throw me a follow on LinkedIn on the Rude Dog Show. You can go to rudedogshow.com and just take a pic of well over 450 pieces of audio in 6 years of broadcast, and some you like and some you won't, but enjoy it nonetheless.
I'm not so sure I can count that high. But I can tell you what.
I think I lose count after 400.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm still waiting to stir the pot with this Tua versus Stafford thing. You and I are going to be mixing it up an awful lot on this subject over the course of the next several weeks as we start to get closer to the draft, the combine, and all that. Before we let you off the air, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that Tua is going to be doing a lot of the physical activities over there. Is it just mainly interviews? Is that correct?
That's what I understand.
Right.
At least that is the rumor. However, you never know. I mean, if he's going to go around talking up who he is and what he's trying to accomplish and how much he's ready for the NFL, I think there needs to be some really good ears to really pay attention, close attention to what he's really trying to say. And I think he's NFL ready.
Well, yeah, you've stated that quite a bit. The question is will he be, what area code will he be playing in, and what zip code will he be getting his paycheck? Or nowadays they do everything direct deposit anyways, don't they? I don't know.
Yeah, direct deposit, me too.
Yeah. So why don't you remind us what the weather is in Denver, Colorado? What is it?
It's snowing right now.
Okay, good. Well, you know what? David Levin is calling from Jacksonville, so thank you very much, Rudy. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Talk soon. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we welcome David Levin to the program, and David is about to join us. We just lost him, but we're going to get him back. So, but meanwhile, this is the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth. We had Rudy Reyes on, and now we're about to be joined by David Levin. And
Jay,
David, here he is. We welcome David Levin to the Sports Exchange. How you doing tonight, David?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on, guys.
My pleasure. All right, so what's going on up in Jacksonville? Give us the latest doings up there.
Nothing real exciting yet. I know that we're preparing for the combine. Front office is starting to get a little more antsy, with what's going on. There are decisions to be made in the next few days that could definitely affect the team's future. I know that we've talked a lot about what's going on with the quarterback situation or the head coaching changes that could possibly happen, or the coaching staff. Free agency and the NFL draft are just around the corner, but now we have to decide, are we going to keep Unique Ngakwe? Are we going to pursue players in free agency? And basically discuss, is Nick Foles still part of the long-term plans of the team? Those things are all looming. I know that the front office and their scout teams and the draft perspective, they're all hunkering down inside the building, preparing for the combine and what they're about to see. But there are still major issues that are going on with this team, Scott. As you know, that this could affect how the team either is successful or it plummets into the NFL abyss. I hate using that term, but it could possibly happen with one move that just basically puts lets everything fall apart. It's kind of like the pulling the string that continually gets pulled, and before you know it, you just have a bunch of yarn. That's a part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, obviously, the main thing that we talk about in Jacksonville is the dynamics that you have, or you no longer have Tom Coughlin. So I guess if there's ever been a time where the draft has been really intriguing, it is more so now with a somewhat of a change of structure.
I agree with you, and I think I don't necessarily think it's just the NFL draft. I think that there's excitement in the potential of a different perspective. Before Tom was there, Dave Caldwell ran free agency, and he ran the draft, and he was the reason why Calais Campbell and A.J. Bouye and Barry Church signed in 2017. That wasn't Tom Coughlin's doing. That was Dave Caldwell. In fact, Campbell made it a point to say he never entered into any negotiation with Tom Coughlin. He did talk to Tom, I believe it was once, and it might have been after the fact. But Dave Caldwell was the one calling the shots with that. So if there's anything to be positive about, if Dave can work his magic and get us another trio like that this year, then we might be sitting pretty again.
Yeah, well, you said the word F. I don't know what else to tell you when it comes to the word F anymore. I've been in Detroit too long. You've been in Jacksonville too long, and we're batting 50% about two of the four teams that have never made it to the Super Bowl. So why don't you go to Webster's Dictionary and tell me what the real definition of if is? And when you come up with the same one I do, which you probably will, call me back on speed dial, which you probably will pretty quick anyway. So that's beside the point.
It could be worse. We could be Bengals fans. I mean.
No, they've gotten to a couple Super Bowls, man. They couldn't be any worse than that.
Yeah, but
come on.
That's a really bad situation.
Well, but they've been to Super Bowls, man. When you're in the Final Four, but the wrong Final Four, there's a problem. Okay,
right.
Final Four in NCAA basketball works. Final Four here is awful. It's called Disaster 101. So let's break down a couple of the logistics while we have about 15 or 20 minutes or so to go. Sure. What happens if the Jacksonville Jaguars trade Nick Foles?
Okay, first of all, I want to know, when we talked about it the other night, I got thrown a curveball. I had to regroup real quick. I think I did very well on the air without losing, my religion or anything like that.
Okay.
Thank you, Candy, for that. I appreciate that.
No problem.
In all seriousness, it's still a topic that we down here think could happen. I mean, we've heard enough people on radio that have NFL ties think it could happen. It's a slight chance. And we talked about the other night, it had to be to certain teams. Chicago, Philadelphia. I threw the Raiders in there because of the quarterback situation. I throw Indianapolis in there because of his connection to Frank Wright. There are certain things that dominoes have to fall. Phillip Rivers has to find a place to play. Tom Brady has to find a place to play. We know that Drew Brees is coming back. I don't know whether it's going to be in New Orleans or not. But let's say for the
Drew Brees Drew Brees will be playing in New Orleans. Question is, where will his backup Teddy Bridgewater be playing?
Right, you're right. And then Bridgewater's a different scenario, and we talked about that the other night.
Right.
What I think will happen is, let's say for the sake of argument, it's Chicago. They're not totally sold on Trubisky.
Okay.
And Foles is the kind of guy who could come in there, and he probably would light a fire in that offense, given their wide receivers, given their running game. It is a place where I think he fits the best. So let's say that we've got two quarterbacks on the roster. We have Gardner Minshew and we have Joshua Dobbs. We know what Minshew can do, and we know that he needs improvement. And there are times when Minshew mania is amazing, and then there's Josh Dobbs. We know nothing. So the Jaguars would definitely need, first of all, they'd have to figure out how to trade him and be able to work with their salary cap. And then you need to find a veteran to come in and play, or at least to back up Minshew. Because they're not going to go into 2020 in the same situation, technically, that they were in last year. They traded, a fifth-round pick, Scott, for Dobbs?
Right.
I think it was.
Right.
And he's smart, he's intelligent, he's got a nice arm, and he looked good at Tennessee, and I think he did some mop-up duty in Pittsburgh. But he's a relative unknown, and I don't think that the Jaguars, given the importance of winning, would put themselves in that situation again. They have to have somebody reliable. So do they go out and they make a trade for quarterback? Do they possibly take a swing at Teddy Bridgewater? Oh, yeah, by the way, he wants $30 million as a starter. That's what the rumor's going.
Is that right?
Going on. Yeah, well, I read it. Actually, I did some research right before I got on the phone with you.
Good stuff.
What happened.
All right.
So, I'm a learned individual every once in a while. But,
That's good. All right, go on.
Yeah, don't go there.
Yeah. No comment.
I'll tell you,
That's a
I'll
rarity.
tell you the story about my dad in Florida State. But anyway, so let's say the Jaguars have to find themselves a mid-level veteran quarterback.
Right.
Who is that? I know two guys who probably will be available that I know Jacksonville doesn't want any part of, and that's Blake Bortles and Chad Henne.
God help me. You're talking Blake Bortles, the guy they wanted to run out of town? Let me tell you, before you came on the air, just so you know, hold on. Before you came on the air, Rudy Reyes was here, and I don't know how we got onto this, but Matthew Stafford and Jacksonville, my goodness. I got to ask you this, okay? I don't want to get off topic. You go ahead and say what you're going to say, and I'm going to incorporate this at the end. Go on.
No, go ahead.
How would...
To find somebody I'm still trying to figure out how you're going to come up with this. But anyway, what I do think happens is somebody like a Matt Moore or Chase Daniel or somebody becomes available, and then the Jaguars maybe jump. I understand that Fitzmagic is coming back to Miami, but what happens if the Dolphins take Tua? They've got Josh Rosen. They've got Fitzmagic. They possibly could just win another quarterback. Somebody from that team is going to become available. There are a lot of options that they're going to have to. It's like pulling back the layers of an onion and seeing, what there is in the middle. Go ahead.
I'm hearing too much about Tua. You know what I'd rather do before I talk about Tua Tagovailoa? For all you folks out there that really want to know.
Oh my gosh, I can't pronounce it.
Oh, I've worked hard on the pronunciation to get to this point. If I hear much more about Tua Tagovailoa, I would rather eat a stupid raw onion, and I hate raw onions. I'm an anchovies guy myself. I can't stand Tua. I just got into a debate with Rudy Reyes, before you came on the air about Matthew Stafford and Tua Tagovailoa there. I'm struggling again. Well, I'll just call it double T's, okay?
Just call it TT.
Yeah, there you go. I can't stand this guy. I really can't. I'll tell you how I really feel. Rudy already knows how I feel. He just got in here full, okay? Well, my goodness, somebody take this clown away, man. Okay?
No, I got it.
I just hate him.
The Jaguars have to get themselves a middle-of-the-road veteran quarterback.
Right.
And I was kidding about Henne, and I was kidding about Bortles, but you could see that they're going to go similar to that route, I would think, because they don't want to spend a lot of money on a backup quarterback when we're not sure who's coming and who's going. And I know we'll segue into that now, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
The $64,000 question, which is turned into a $105 million question. Do we keep Henne? Do we franchise him, or do we trade him, or do we this, or do that? Can we keep Calais? And if we got rid of Calais, that might be the dumbest move the Jaguars ever made. And then you got to figure out what to do with the pieces around him. There are other defensive tackles that you could bring in to fill in the middle. Because Marcel Darius is probably not coming back. You have that triangle in the middle. The defensive tackles and your linebacker. It's that triangle that you have to keep closed so you stop the run. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, there were holes that were so big you could have walked through it, Scott.
Really? Well, that's saying a lot. If I'm going to walk through it.
You saw it firsthand.
Oh yeah.
But you know that there's a lot bigger issues to deal with. And now do you decide, well, is he really worth $21 million? Because the Jaguars are going to have to overpay him to keep him here because of the relationship between him and the team.
Right.
And does he really want to be here? Well, this doesn't. I don't think anybody's talked about this. And I've brought this up to certain people, and they look at me like I'm nuts. How could he not want to be here? Well, players don't want to play for the Jaguars. It's as simple as that. The person on social media or, the guy on the streets asking you, well, why don't we just go sign, John Smith, or why don't we go get, Chris Jones, or why don't we go do, and if we had the cap money, even if we had the cap money, what if they don't want to come to Jacksonville? It's it's not unheard of. Players don't want to play for certain teams, and now that the NFLPA has put the crap out about thinking twice about coming to Jacksonville based on what happened with Coughlin, it's conceivable that they may get shut out.
Well, yes and no. I mean, now that you brought up Coughlin, now that he's out of the way, I'm not really ready to go ahead and say that that's the case, but it doesn't help their cause any. It doesn't.
Okay.
Now, all right, so let's go back to a couple things. I want to go mention a couple of points, and then I have a few ideas I want to throw your way. Okay, let's talk about the fact that about the Jaguars finding mid-level players to fill gaps and be better. Are there any players that you think that could potentially be those mid-level players?
Yes, at tight end especially. I believe. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago. I think that given the situation at tight end, the fact that nobody can stay healthy, and the fact that they only have pass catchers, but I think Swaim is going to be cut. That'll save them, I believe, about $7 million in cap space. I see a reunion between Tyler Eifert and Jake Gruden. Because Eifert had his best season in Cincinnati while Gruden was the OC, and I could see him in that West Coast offense plugging up, at the underneath route, or right at the sticks for a 7 or 8 yard gain. It makes sense. It's a low risk, high reward type of deal, similar to Chris Conley, where the Jaguars are maybe putting out 2 years, $8 million. He gets a signing bonus, and it's a prove me thing. That works. I could see them going middle of the road offensive linemen. Take your pick, because there are a lot of them out there, and plug and play, because anything is better than Josh Wells or any of the players they've had before that have come in or come back or played or whatever. It's the same situation. They want a big, ugly who can move the bodies around in open running lanes. I think you can find. I think you're going to see them try and take a shot at finding maybe a wide receiver along the lines of Chris Conley. And by the way, Conley did fairly. I expected more from him, but he had 47 catches last year. I predicted he'd have about 50, especially in that offense. But I think you'll find somebody like that who will be a late signing. He comes in, we find out what the quarterback situation is. Ooh, he's still on, the street. He can catch passes. He's, tall. He's thick. He can outmaneuver the defensive back. They're going to find somebody like that.
Okay.
And they probably will probably get a running back if they can.
So let's go out there and use another hypothetical. What happens if the Jaguars were to trade Nick Foles? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it does two things. First of all, it admits that the Jaguars are wrong, and they're admitting their mistake, and it's not becoming another Blake Bortles situation. And I know it's a higher cap figure, but what they've done is, hey, we took a swing, we missed, we tried, we're going to start over. And I think this fan base would be more receptive to that than to hang on to Bortles for 5 years when we knew it was a failure.
I mean, Foles.
That's yeah. Well, yes. Well, Bortles being the 5-year failure and Foles being the failure.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, okay, right. Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm old and I'm rambling. But,
yeah. Well, we all are. Go ahead.
Well, I think that it tells Gardner Minshew, hey, we're behind you. The coaching staff has made a decision. It's his ball. It's his team. I think that the locker room becomes galvanized again, because you could see it on the field when we watched it. Players like playing for him. When we're in the locker room during the week and they're goofing off with him and having a good time, the players love him. He's got it. He's the jock in high school who's wearing the leather jacket, and everybody wants to be just like him.
Right. Okay. All right. So my question to you, Dave, is this: with the way the salary cap is right now, could the team be able to pursue a top-tier free agent?
I do. I think so if you do certain things. I know that taking care of the Darius contract, I would think they're probably going to release A.J. Boye. They will first ask him to restructure, because that was part of how I figured they would get the money for Jalen Ramsey. Then, A.J. was making $13.5 million. Ramsey was making $3 million. Then he went up to 13.7, but they still had a problem with the cap space. Hey, AJ, we want to restructure. We want to give you another year on the back end, but we want to cut you, $5 or $6 million. What do you think? I don't know if it works out that way this time, but they're going to give him a chance to restructure it, or they probably won't release him. So that's $13 million off. I think it's 11.5 off the books. That's how it works out. Marcel Darius is $22 million. Swaim is $7. Jake Ryan, who didn't play it down for us this year because of that knee injury, I believe he's $5.5. So roughly you've got $45 million right there. Marquise Lee comes off the books because I don't think he's coming back.
Okay.
And then you decide whether you want to keep Norwell, who has been an abject bust.
Right.
There's a $30 million guaranteed over the first 2 years. So you've got $50-something million to play with. Take part of it. Put a tag on Unique, first of all, which will pay him $17.5 million for this year. Then pick and choose the players you want. And if you can get somebody in the interior of the defensive line for $11 million, that's great. And then you have to worry about your offensive lineman. I don't think you're going to get Joe Snooney from New England, but he's the best offensive lineman out there. And the Jaguars may be skittish to give another offensive lineman a huge contract.
Okay.
So you pick and play. But I think the tight end and the defense are the first two positions that they try and fill in free agency.
Okay, I'm going to give you some straight questions. All I want are names at this point. You ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Give me a list of the veterans that are likely to be cut. Just names.
Darius, Boyer, Swaim, possibly Norwell, Marquise Lee, Jake Ryan.
Okay, and the guys that would negotiate a new deal.
AJ, Calais, Norwell. You may see Brandon Linder, too. I know they want to keep him, but he's getting paid quite a bit of money, and it's too much. I'm trying to think who else has a large contract that they can negotiate with. They're not going to try and. The one I want to see them try and renegotiate is Miles Jack. That ain't happening because that was highway robbery last year. I don't know if Nick Foles can renegotiate his contracts.
I don't think he will.
One thing that,
yeah.
Well, I don't think he would, but
right.
But if there was a way that he would come to them and say, "Look, I want to stay. Let's make this work." Similar to it's a Tom Brady situation where Brady for years didn't take a lot of money because he wanted the Patriots to put players around him to win Super Bowls. Marcel Darius did that last year, if you remember. He was scheduled to make, I think, $20 million, and he renegotiated. So the Jaguars had more cap space so that they could bring in Foles or somebody else.
Right.
And that was part of the cap relief. I don't see that happening again, with any type of real big situation.
No, I mean, the bottom line is I still think the best bet with Foles is give him one more year under, is it Jay Gruden, and you got Ben McAdoo, and then part company after 2 years. But that's
no matter what, no matter what, he's gone after the season.
Right, that's my point.
If he stays, he's gone.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
One more other question, then I'm going to throw another hypothetical at you, okay? You indicated to me earlier that you like the group of wide receivers that the Jaguars have, so you don't see that they're really going to draft any wide outs in the first round.
No, I don't. And here's why. I think that the offense was predicated, and from a structural standpoint that we saw at OTAs and training camp, it looked really good. And it looked really good with Nick Foles throwing it. I think that Gardner Minshew playing in an offensive scheme, but he had to learn it on the fly, and they gave him extra reps in practice when he wasn't starting. To connect with his wide receivers was helpful and harmful at the same time. I like the guys that are on the field. We have three guys who are 7.44 speed out there with Dede, Chris Conley, and DJ Chark. Keelan Cole came up came up big when they needed him as a replacement receiver. Those are four still decent wide receivers. I think that if they were to take a wide receiver, they take him at number 20, or hopefully somebody falls to number 42. The idea of them taking sort of CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma or Jerry Jeudy at 9 in Alabama, to me, is ludicrous when you have other holes that are much bigger than who's going to catch a ball on the outside.
Yeah, but I got to tell you one thing about Jerry Jeudy. Candy and I saw him play against the Michigan Wolverines, and he looked awfully good. So, obviously that was one game when he lit it up against Amazing Blue, but I tell you, the way he played, Jerry Jeudy, I think, will be a good pro prospect, but that'll be for another day.
Well,
so,
no doubt. No doubt. I think that you can give the kid, and I can't pronounce his name. I think you get the kid from Colorado in the second round.
Right. Well,
is it Van Jefferson, the kid out of Florida, who was a senior who just graduated? I think it was Van Jefferson, but he could be had in the third round, and it would be a solid pickup for the Jaguars. He's got speed and size, and he can either play in the slot or on the out, on the wing. It's you get to pick and choose.
All right, so the theme of this sports exchange should be called hypothetical. So I'm going to end this program on one more hypothetical. All right, you ready?
Go ahead.
What would Matthew Stafford look like in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform, and how rabid would that fan base be if you had Matthew Stafford in Jacksonville, let alone the fact that he played in Georgia? That must be a real loaded question, isn't it?
That's a loaded question, but I think I have the right answer for you.
Okay.
What was everybody's reaction when Nick Foles signed here?
You tell me. I know what I want to think.
I know what you want to say, but they were excited. He was the savior. He has a Super Bowl ring. He was going to lead this team to the promised land. Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback than Nick Foles. At least I believe he is.
I know he is. The guy's thrown for over 40,000 yards with the Detroit Lions. Come on, David. Really?
Here's the deal. Nick Foles was a good quarterback in Philadelphia because he had a good offensive line.
Right.
I don't know how great Detroit's offensive line is, but I will tell you that Matthew Stafford will suffer the same fate as every quarterback here in the world. It seems like every good quarterback goes to die because the offensive line sucks.
Well, okay. Well, that's a good answer. I still think that the Georgia Bulldog would definitely ignite the Cats real well in Jacksonville.
I think it's a great move, but I don't think they can afford him either.
Well, that's probably true. But, let's not kid ourselves. Matthew Stafford in Jacksonville would certainly be a very interesting narrative. But I'm going to get back to what I said with Rudy. If the Lions let Stafford go and they take TT, then they're in deep trouble because I think the Lions need defense.
Let me ask you this real quick, and I know that we're running up on time. Would
Sure.
you be better served with somebody like Herbert as your quarterback?
I don't think the Lions need a quarterback. I think the Lions need defense.
Well, there you go. That's I want.
Stafford is not the problem in Detroit. Well, any of these clowns out there understand that Matthew Stafford is not the problem in Detroit. They don't have a running back. Their defense stinks. You bring in Matt Patricia, defensive coach. How does the defense go? Way downtown, bang. Okay. The reality is, but we'll find out in a few weeks, especially when I'm up there for a couple of days. And the reality is Matthew Stafford is not the problem in Detroit. And I don't have about 10 million hours of programming tonight to be able to justify it. All I know is the Lions have deeper problems than Stafford at quarterback. So with that said, okay.
The Jaguars have deeper problems than their quarterback situation too.
So then we'll
leave it at that.
So David Levin and I can go ahead and have our echoes of the deep here on the Sports Exchange. And I want to thank Rudy Reyes on the first half and David Levin on the second half, and look forward to having this tandem again here on the South Florida Tribune Network. So meanwhile, David, before we go off the air, why don't you go ahead and give everybody else your contact information so they get a hold of David M. Levin.
Sure. I'm on fansided.com. I cover the Jaguars in football, Major League Baseball and the Marlins. I am on Twitter at DM719907. They haven't told me to change it yet. When I have a new address, everybody will know.
Well, I know about addresses many years ago when I was over in student at USF. Okay, when I had to have Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, I made sure I got address labels so I didn't have to write this stupid thing out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, I know.
Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, but we're not going to get on Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. All we did was talk about your address. With that said, okay, I want to thank Rudy Reyes and you, David, for being on this edition of the Sports Exchange. So everybody have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Thanks a lot.